Michelle Jackson was a proud woman. She wore her uniform with honor. Her Navy cap was perfectly placed, and her medals gleamed under the airport lights. She was a Rear Admiral in the United States Navy, one of the highest ranks anyone could reach. She was on her way to an important meeting where she would discuss plans to keep the country safe. Michelle knew her work was important, but today something unexpected was about to happen. The airport was busy, full of travelers rushing to catch their flights. People were talking, some laughing, some looking tired. Michelle walked calmly toward the security gate. She had done this many times before, but this time things felt different. As she approached the line to board the plane, two police officers stepped in front of her. Both were white men in their mid-30s. One had a serious look, the other seemed unsure. "Ma'am, you need to stop," one officer said firmly. Michelle paused. She looked at them, confused. She had all the right papers, her official documents were with her, and she was in her uniform. She was not just any traveler. She was a high-ranking military officer. But the officers did not smile or greet her kindly. Instead, they asked for her identification. Michelle reached inside her bag and pulled out her military ID card. The officers took it slowly, studying her picture and name. But instead of letting her go, they asked more questions. "What's your business here? Why are you in this area?" one officer asked. Michelle replied calmly, "I am on official Navy business. I am boarding a flight to attend a summit." She showed them the letter of assignment on her phone. Still, the officers seemed suspicious. One of them said, "This doesn't look right. Are you sure you're an officer? We need to check this further." Michelle's heart sank a little. She had faced challenges before, but this was different. Here, in a public place, she was being questioned not because of what she did, but because of how she looked. Her skin was dark, her face proud, but to these officers it seemed like a mistake. People around them started to notice. Some whispered to each other. A few looked surprised, but no one stepped in. Michelle kept her calm. She knew anger wouldn't help. She stood tall, her back straight, her eyes steady on the officers. "I am Rear Admiral Michelle Jackson of the U.S. Navy. You can verify this with your superiors," she said clearly, her voice firm but respectful. The officers looked at each other, unsure what to do next. One of them asked her to step aside for further questioning. Michelle hesitated. She knew this was not just a simple security check. This was about assumptions made because of her race. She took a deep breath and followed their instructions, knowing that fighting here would not solve everything, but remaining silent would only make her invisible. As she walked away from the line, Michelle noticed some people watching her. A few had their phones out, possibly ready to record what was happening. She knew that stories like hers were often shared online, sometimes to support her, sometimes to judge her. She tried not to think about it. Right now, she had to stay composed. The officers continued to ask her questions. They wanted to confirm her identity, her reason for travel, and her credentials. Michelle understood their job was to keep everyone safe, but she also saw how their suspicion was shaped by her skin color. It was a feeling she had faced many times in her life. Still, she believed that respect and truth could overcome misunderstanding. After a few minutes that felt like hours, Michelle asked politely, "Is there anything else you need from me? I have official orders and identification if you would like to see them." The officers hesitated. One of them nodded slowly and said, "Yes, please show us your badge." Michelle reached into her bag and carefully took out her Navy badge. It was shiny, engraved with her rank and name, Rear Admiral Michelle Jackson. The badge was a symbol of honor, courage, and years of hard work. She handed it to the officer. As soon as the officers saw the badge, their expressions changed. The seriousness turned into surprise, the doubt into embarrassment. The man who had stopped her looked down, then quickly back at Michelle. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We didn't know." he said quietly. Michelle accepted the apology without a word. She felt a mix of emotions. Relief that they finally recognized her, sadness that it had to come to this point, and frustration at the unnecessary delay. She knew this was not just about her but about many others who faced similar moments. An airline supervisor arrived and quickly understood what had happened. She apologized on behalf of the airline and promised that Michelle could board the plane immediately. Passengers around them whispered and some even applauded quietly. Michelle smiled gently and thanked everyone. She walked toward the gate, her head held high. Behind her, the officers stepped back, clearly shaken by what had just happened. Michelle knew this incident was small compared to her years of service, but it was powerful enough to show how far people still had to go to truly respect each other. As Michelle sat in the airplane seat, she thought about the many times she had overcome obstacles. Her journey had not been easy. Growing up in a small town, she had faced many challenges because of her race and gender. But she never gave up. The Navy had taught her discipline, courage, and leadership. She hoped that one day, others would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the strength of their character. The airport was quiet now, and the plane was ready to take off. Michelle looked out the window, ready for the next step in her mission, not just for her country, but for justice and equality. After the tense moment at the airport security gate, things changed in an instant. Michelle Jackson, Rear Admiral of the U.S. Navy, stood quietly but firmly as she produced her official badge. It was no ordinary piece of metal. It was a symbol of decades of service, sacrifice, and leadership. The badge bore her rank, her name, and the seal of the Navy, clearly showing her authority. As the two white officers held the badge in their hands, their expressions shifted from suspicion to shock. It was as if their whole world changed in that single moment. The officer who had been questioning her so harshly looked up with wide eyes, and his mouth opened slightly as he tried to find the right words. The other officer, who had been skeptical and almost dismissive, now seemed to shrink back. The confidence they had displayed just minutes before was replaced by embarrassment and confusion. Michelle stayed calm. She knew this was not about her badge or even about her rank. This was about deep-rooted assumptions and biases that people sometimes carried without even realizing it. She could see it in their faces. They had judged her because of the color of her skin, not because of who she was. Just then, an airline supervisor rushed over after hearing the commotion. She was a middle-aged woman with a kind face who quickly recognized the situation. When she saw the badge, she immediately understood that Michelle was a high-ranking officer. "I am so sorry for the trouble, Rear Admiral," the supervisor said, her voice filled with regret. "Please come with me. We will get you on the flight right away." Passengers around the area had noticed the incident too. Some had stopped to watch, others whispered among themselves, and a few had pulled out their phones to record what was happening. In today's world, moments like these could easily go viral on social media. Some recordings might show Michelle as a victim of unfair treatment, while others might focus on the officer's reaction. Michelle knew this moment was bigger than her. It was about respect, dignity, and the way people treated each other. She quietly accepted the apology but didn't feel the need to say much more. Her presence, her badge, and her quiet strength spoke louder than words. As she moved toward the boarding gate with the supervisor, Michelle could feel the weight of what had just happened. The officers who had stopped her were still standing there, their faces a mix of regret and discomfort. One of them looked down and muttered something under his breath, clearly realizing that their suspicion had been wrong. This incident was not new to Michelle. Throughout her life, she had faced moments when people judged her unfairly because of her race and gender. But being a Rear Admiral meant she had spent years overcoming challenges that many people couldn't imagine. She was proud of her journey and her accomplishments. Still, moments like this reminded her how much work remained to be done. The airline staff quickly helped Michelle board the plane, and soon she was seated comfortably ready for her flight. As the plane took off, she looked out the window and thought about what had just happened. It was a sharp reminder that even though she held one of the highest ranks in the Navy, the color of her skin still affected how people saw her. She thought about the officers, two men doing their job but letting their assumptions cloud their judgment. She wondered what they must have felt after seeing her badge. Maybe they were embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. But she hoped that they would learn from this moment and think differently the next time they met someone who didn't fit their expectations. The incident also made Michelle think about all the young people watching. She imagined young black girls and boys, and even adults, who might see this story online or hear about it from friends. She hoped they would see her not just as a victim, but as a symbol of strength and perseverance. She wanted them to know that, no matter where they came from or what challenges they faced, they could rise and achieve great things. Michelle's journey to becoming a Rear Admiral had been anything but easy. She remembered her childhood, growing up in a small town in the South where opportunities for black girls were limited. She often faced discouragement and low expectations from teachers and neighbors. Many had told her to settle for less or aim lower because of her race and gender. But Michelle never accepted those limits. Instead, she worked hard, studied diligently, and believed in herself. When she got to college, she met a Navy recruiter who saw her potential and encouraged her to join the military. It was a turning point in her life. She trained hard, learned leadership skills, and quickly stood out among her peers. The Navy was a tough environment, with its own challenges of sexism and racism, but Michelle kept pushing forward. Her promotion to Rear Admiral was not just a personal achievement. It was a breakthrough for many others who looked up to her as a role model. She had earned respect through her dedication, intelligence, and ability to lead. Still, despite her rank and experience, incidents like the one at the airport reminded her of the unfair judgments many people faced daily. Michelle's thoughts also turned to the future. She realized that moments like this could be powerful teaching tools. She hoped to use her story to inspire change, to encourage law enforcement officers and others to confront their biases and see people fully, without jumping to conclusions. Back at the airport, the two officers discussed what had happened. They talked quietly about how they had misjudged Michelle and how they felt embarrassed by their mistake. Both agreed they needed better training and awareness to avoid such situations. In the future, their experience was a wake-up call, a moment that challenged their assumptions and opened their eyes to the need for fairness and respect. Meanwhile, the airline staff reviewed their security and boarding procedures. They knew that their employees needed to be trained to recognize and respect military personnel, especially high-ranking officers like Rear Admiral Jackson. The incident led to discussions about how to handle such situations better and with greater sensitivity. On social media, the video of the incident began spreading. Comments poured in from all over the country. Many people praised Michelle for her calm and dignified response. They admired her strength and leadership. Others used the incident to talk about broader issues of racial bias and discrimination in everyday life. Some people defended the officers, saying they were just doing their job and that mistakes could happen. Others called for accountability and better training for law enforcement. The story became part of a larger conversation about race, respect, and fairness in America. Michelle saw the conversation growing, but chose to remain focused on her work. She issued a short statement, thanking those who supported her and calling for understanding and respect for all people, regardless of their background. She emphasized that leadership was not about rank or medals, but about treating others with dignity. As the plane flew toward its destination, Michelle felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was more determined than ever to use her position to create change. She wanted to mentor young people, especially those from underrepresented communities, and show them that barriers could be broken. She also wanted to work with law enforcement agencies to help improve their training and understanding of diversity. She believed that by building bridges between communities, officers, and leaders, they could create a safer and fairer society for everyone. The experience at the airport was a reminder of the challenges she had overcome and those she still faced. It was a moment of learning and growth, not just for Michelle, but for the officers, the airline staff, the passengers, and even the people watching from afar. Michelle knew that change would not happen overnight, but she also knew that every conversation, every act of courage, and every story shared brought the world closer to justice. Her badge was more than a symbol of rank. It was a beacon of hope, resilience, and the fight for equality. The flight landed safely and Michelle stepped off the plane ready to face her next mission. She carried with her not just her uniform and medals, but the strength of a woman who had broken barriers and the courage to keep fighting for a better future. As the plane soared high above the clouds, Michelle Jackson sat quietly, staring out the window. The small towns, cities, and rivers below looked peaceful from up here, but inside her mind, memories were rushing through her like a fast river. The airport incident had reminded her of many things: her journey, her struggles, and the countless moments that had shaped her into the person she was today. She closed her eyes and thought back to where it all began. Michelle grew up in a small town in the deep South, a place where the sun seemed to shine brighter, but life was not always easy. The streets were lined with old trees and small houses. Most people knew each other, but for Michelle, growing up as a black girl was full of challenges. The world around her was shaped by history, and though times had changed, many people still carried old ideas about race and opportunity. At school, Michelle was a quiet student, but she was also very smart. She loved learning, especially about science and history. However, some teachers didn't believe she could achieve great things. "You should aim lower," one of her teachers once told her, meaning she shouldn't try for college or a big career. "It's hard for girls like you," the teacher said, not realizing the power of those words. Michelle felt hurt, but she didn't give up. At home, her family always encouraged her to be strong and to believe in herself. Her mother worked hard, juggling 2 jobs, and always reminded Michelle, "You are meant for great things. Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise." At school, Michelle faced more than just doubt from teachers. Sometimes, other students made fun of her because she was different. They whispered behind her back or stared at her clothes and hair. It was lonely sometimes, but Michelle found strength in books and dreams. She imagined herself doing something important, something that would make a difference. When Michelle went to college, her life began to change. It was the first time she left her small town and saw a bigger world. At college, she met many new people and learned about opportunities she had never known. One day, a Navy recruiter came to campus. He talked about the Navy's values, training, and chances for leadership. Michelle was interested but also cautious. Could she fit in? Could she succeed? After much thought, Michelle decided to join the Navy. It was a bold choice, and not an easy one. The Navy was mostly men, and most of them were white. Michelle had to prove herself every day. Training was hard and sometimes she felt out of place. Some officers doubted her abilities simply because she was a black woman. There were days when Michelle felt frustrated and tired. She remembered one training exercise where a senior officer questioned her leadership skills just because she spoke up with a new idea. "Maybe you're too young," he said. But Michelle didn't let it stop her. She worked harder, studied longer, and learned from every mistake. Her resilience paid off. Slowly but surely, she earned the respect of her peers and superiors. Michelle was not just good at her job, she was brilliant. She had a sharp mind for strategy and a natural ability to lead people. Her team trusted her, and her superiors noticed her dedication. Over the years, Michelle rose through the ranks. She was promoted to lieutenant, then commander, and finally, to captain. Each step was harder than the last, and each came with new responsibilities. But she never forgot where she came from or the people who believed in her. Her promotion to Rear Admiral was a historic moment. She was one of the few black women to ever hold such a high rank. It was a symbol of progress, but also a reminder of the long journey ahead for many others. Despite her success, Michelle continued to face moments of doubt and discrimination. She once attended a Navy meeting where some officers ignored her suggestions or talked over her. But she stayed strong, always leading with grace and intelligence. She knew that her actions could open doors for those who came after her. The incident at the airport brought all these memories rushing back. It was a sharp reminder that no matter how far she had come, the world could still judge her unfairly. But Michelle also saw it as an opportunity, a moment to show how dignity and courage could change minds. She thought about the young people who might see her story and feel inspired. She wanted them to know that success was possible, even when the odds were against them. Michelle's journey was not just about personal achievement, it was about breaking barriers and creating new paths. As the plane moved closer to its destination, Michelle felt a deep sense of purpose. She knew she had a role beyond her rank and medals. She wanted to mentor young women and men, especially those from minority backgrounds, to help them believe in themselves and reach for their dreams. Michelle also thought about the officers at the airport. She hoped that their encounter with her badge would stay with them. Maybe it would make them pause next time they met someone who didn't fit their expectations. Maybe it would teach them to see beyond appearances and respect every person's story. The Navy had changed Michelle's life, but Michelle also wanted to change the Navy and the world by being a leader who inspired others. She planned to start programs that supported diversity and inclusion, helping create a future where no one would be stopped because of who they were. As the plane began its descent, Michelle looked out again at the world below. The mountains, rivers, and cities seemed smaller from here, but her dreams felt bigger than ever. She was ready for the next chapter of her journey, carrying the lessons of her past and the hope for a better future. Her story was one of courage, perseverance, and faith. It showed that even when people try to block your path, you can rise above with strength and dignity. Michelle Jackson was not just an admiral in the Navy. She was a symbol of what was possible when you refused to give up. The plane touched down, smoothly, and Michelle stood to leave, ready to face whatever came next. She carried not only her badge, but also the weight of history and the promise of change. With every step she took, she was breaking new ground, lighting the way for those who would follow. After the plane landed, Michelle Jackson stepped off with a calm and determined look. The city was bustling with activity, but Michelle was focused on the work ahead. She knew the moment at the airport had left a mark, not only on her but also on the people around her. This was more than just a personal experience. It was a powerful story about respect, fairness, and how people sometimes judge others too quickly. Michelle had an important meeting scheduled. It was a gathering of top military leaders and government officials, coming together to discuss strategies to keep the country safe. This summit was crucial, and Michelle's voice was vital. Her role as Rear Admiral gave her the responsibility to lead discussions on important naval operations and national security issues. As she entered the conference room, Michelle noticed the mixture of faces, men and women of different backgrounds and ranks. Some greeted her warmly, others with curiosity. They all knew her as a leader, but Michelle could tell some were still learning about her story. She smiled gently, ready to show through her actions that leadership was about respect, collaboration, and courage. The meeting began with a serious tone. Discussions about security threats, resources, and technology filled the room. Michelle spoke confidently, sharing her insights and plans. She talked about the importance of teamwork and how diversity in the military brought strength and fresh ideas. But beneath the professional atmosphere, Michelle's mind often drifted back to the airport incident. She wondered how many other people faced similar experiences but didn't have the chance to show their true identity or worth. She thought about the officers who had stopped her and hoped that her example might help change their thinking. After the meeting, Michelle met with some of the other leaders. They praised her ideas and recognized the challenges she had overcome. One older officer, who had been quiet during the meeting, approached her. "Admiral Jackson," he said kindly, "your story is inspiring. I know you have faced more than most people realize. Thank you for your leadership." Michelle nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and humility. She knew leadership was never about one person alone. It was about lifting others and making a difference together. Outside the conference room, Michelle received a call from her family. Hearing their voices was a comfort after a long day. Her mother told her how proud she was, and her younger sister said she watched the news about the airport incident. They were proud of Michelle but also worried about how hard it had been. Michelle reassured them with a smile. "Every challenge is a chance to teach and grow. I'm doing this not just for me, but for all of us." As evening came, Michelle reflected on how her life had changed. From a small town to a high-ranking officer, from a quiet girl to a powerful leader, her journey was a testament to strength and determination. But she also knew the road ahead was still long. The airport incident had started conversations about racial bias and respect. News outlets covered the story, and people debated what happened. Some criticized the officers, while others saw it as a misunderstanding. But many agreed that it was a sign of deeper problems that needed attention. Michelle decided to take action. She wanted to help improve how law enforcement and security personnel interacted with people from all backgrounds. She reached out to police departments and airport security agencies to offer training and workshops. Her message was clear: respect and understanding could prevent incidents like hers and build safer communities. She also spoke at events about diversity and inclusion in the military. Michelle shared her story not to seek sympathy but to inspire change. She encouraged young people, especially girls and minorities, to pursue their dreams and not be held back by prejudice. Michelle's efforts gained support. Organizations invited her to speak, and more people joined the conversation about equality and fairness. She worked with others to develop programs that taught respect and empathy to officers and travelers alike. Meanwhile, the officers involved in the airport incident faced internal reviews. They attended training sessions about bias and professionalism. Both men expressed regret and said they wanted to learn and grow. Michelle's calm response had opened the door for understanding rather than conflict. At home, Michelle balanced her demanding career with family and self-care. She found strength in meditation, exercise, and quiet moments with loved ones. Her family was her anchor, reminding her of where she came from and why she fought so hard. Michelle also mentored young officers in the Navy, sharing lessons from her journey. She helped them navigate challenges and encouraged them to lead with integrity and kindness. Her leadership style was not about authority but about lifting others up and creating a culture of respect. One day, Michelle received a letter from a young woman who had watched the airport incident video. The woman wrote about how Michelle's story gave her hope and courage to join the military despite doubts from others. The letter touched Michelle deeply. It reminded her that her journey was about more than rank or medals. It was about inspiring others to believe in themselves. As Michelle prepared for another meeting, she thought about the future. She dreamed of a military and society where everyone was judged by their character, skills, and heart, not by the color of their skin or where they came from. Her story was a step toward that future. A story of courage in the face of bias, strength in moments of doubt, and leadership that embraced diversity. Michelle Jackson, Rear Admiral of the U.S. Navy, was more than a badge or a title. She was a symbol of hope, progress, and the power of one person to make a difference. After many months had passed since the airport incident, Rear Admiral Michelle Jackson found herself reflecting on how much had changed, not just in her life, but in the lives of those around her. The experience that once felt like an unfair challenge had become a powerful moment of learning and growth. Michelle understood deeply that true leadership was not just about holding a high rank or wearing a uniform, It was about inspiring change, building bridges, and giving hope to others who faced similar struggles. Michelle's life was busy, filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and mentoring young officers. Every day she worked to make the Navy a better place, a place where everyone felt valued regardless of their background. She took pride in leading by example, showing kindness and strength even in difficult situations. Her story, shared openly, became a beacon for many who were still fighting their own battles against bias and prejudice. One day, Michelle was invited to speak at a large conference focused on diversity and inclusion in the military. The event was attended by leaders, young recruits, activists, and civilians interested in making society more fair and just. Michelle knew this was her chance to reach many people at once, to share her journey and lessons learned. She prepared carefully, thinking about what she wanted to say. When Michelle took the stage, the room was filled with eager faces. She began by telling her story, the proud moment she earned her Rear Admiral rank, the struggles she faced growing up, and the airport incident that had captured national attention. She spoke honestly about how it felt to be judged unfairly, but also how she chose to respond with dignity rather than anger. Her words were powerful. She reminded everyone that behind every badge, every uniform, and every rank, there was a person, with hopes, fears, and dreams. She urged people to look beyond appearances and stereotypes, to treat others with respect and empathy. Michelle's message was clear. Equality was not just a goal, but a daily commitment. After her speech, many people came up to Michelle to thank her. Some shared their own stories of discrimination and resilience. Others asked how they could help, make a difference. Michelle listened carefully, encouraging each person to be a leader in their own way. She believed that small actions, kind words, open minds, and honest conversations could create a ripple effect that changed communities. At the same time, Michelle continued to work inside the Navy to improve training programs for officers and personnel. She helped develop workshops that taught about unconscious bias, cultural awareness, and effective communication. These programs aimed to prevent incidents like the one she experienced and to build a stronger, more united military. Michelle also supported initiatives to recruit and retain more women and minorities in the Navy. She knew that diversity made the force stronger and more prepared for any challenge. By mentoring young officers, she helped them build confidence and leadership skills, showing them that they belonged at the highest levels. Outside the military, Michelle's story inspired many people across the country. News articles, documentaries, and social media posts highlighted her journey and the lessons she shared. Schools invited her to speak to students, and community groups welcomed her insights on leadership and justice. One particularly memorable moment was when Michelle visited a high school in her hometown. Standing in the very gymnasium where she had once been told to aim lower, she spoke to a group of teenagers who were full of questions and hope. She told them, "Your dreams are bigger than anyone else's limits. Don't let anyone tell you who you are or what you can be. You have the power to change your story." The students listened intently, some with tears in their eyes. Michelle's presence showed them that it was possible to rise above obstacles and make a real impact. For many, she was not just a Rear Admiral. She was proof that they could achieve greatness. Michelle also remained aware that her journey was ongoing. Even as she celebrated successes, she faced new challenges. The world was changing, and with it came new discussions about race, gender, and equality. Michelle believed these conversations were necessary and welcomed them as opportunities for growth. One challenge she took on was working with law enforcement agencies across the country to promote better understanding and cooperation between officers and the communities they served. Drawing on her own experiences, Michelle helped design training that emphasized empathy, respect, and the importance of seeing people's full stories. She met with police chiefs, officers, and community leaders, sharing ideas and listening to their concerns. Michelle's approach was collaborative. She knew that real change came from working together, not from blame or division. As time went on, Michelle's influence grew. She became a trusted advisor on issues of diversity, leadership, and inclusion. Her advice was sought not only in military circles, but also in government and education. Through her work, Michelle helped shape policies that aimed to create fairer, more equitable environments. Yet, through it all, Michelle remained humble. She remembered her mother's words about strength and belief, and she stayed connected to her roots. She made sure to spend time with family and friends, cherishing the moments that grounded her. Michelle also took time for herself. She enjoyed quiet walks, reading books about history and leadership, and reflecting on her journey. She often journaled, writing down thoughts and ideas that would help her continue growing as a leader and person. Despite her busy life, Michelle never lost sight of the power of kindness. She believed that small gestures, a smile, a word of encouragement, a listening ear, could change someone's day or even their life. She made it a point to lift others, to celebrate their successes, and to stand with those who needed support. One day, Michelle received a special invitation from a group of young people who had been inspired by her story. They had formed a leadership club at their school to promote equality and respect. They asked Michelle to be their honorary mentor and to speak at their annual event. Michelle gladly accepted. She knew this was another chance to make a difference. At the event, she met young leaders full of passion and hope. They shared their dreams and challenges, and Michelle listened with pride. She encouraged them to keep pushing for change, reminding them that their voices mattered. As the event ended, Michelle looked around the room. She saw the future in those young faces, the next generation of leaders who would build a more just world. She felt hope rising in her heart. Looking back on everything, Michelle realized her story was not just about overcoming one unfair moment at an airport. It was about resilience, leadership, and the power of standing up for what is right. It was about the journeys we all take to break barriers and build bridges. Michelle Jackson, Rear Admiral of the U.S. Navy, was a symbol of courage, dignity, and hope. Her life showed that no matter the obstacles, with strength and kindness, anyone could rise and inspire others to do the same. And so Michelle's journey continued, not just as a leader in the Navy, but as a beacon of change and possibility for all who heard her story.